So the good news is we keep this short and sweet today. It's not a lot topped up from last week. We did get out of the bye healthy, and so that's positive for us. Had a really good week. You know, kind of put the game against Eastern Washington to bed on Monday with the players, and had two, I thought, really good days of practice on Tuesday and Wednesday. Had a lot of the young guys get an opportunity to play a ton of reps. Looking at some guys in some different spots and trying to get some guys healthy and ready to go for the stretch run. Gave him a good lift on Thursday and got him out of here. So a lot of the kids a lot of the redshirt guys, first time to get a chance to go home, and that's a long stretch for some of those kids. You know, usually you get by a little bit earlier in the year, and so they came back refreshed. We had I thought a really good practice yesterday, and you know, we're full into Southern Utah prep now. And so, you know, as far as Southern Utah is concerned, I look at them on tape and tell you what, I see a team that's obviously improved a great deal over the last couple of weeks. I think kind of hitting their stride. They had a junior college transfer quarterback that's come in, and I think it took him a few weeks to kind of get a feel for what his skill set was and what he did well. And they definitely got on track against Idaho State last week on the offensive side of the ball. I think defensively, they've been pretty consistent throughout the course of the year. I think they're a good football team on that side of the ball. And you know, some guys that stand out for me on the offensive side, Taylor, the dual threat quarterback that I talked about, I think he can hurt you both with his arm and his legs. He throws the vertical balls very well, very good in the quick game. And then, you know, they definitely have some quarterback design runs for him. Brown, number 4, the tailback, he's a 6 foot, 205 pound physical runner, and I think fits their scheme very well. And then probably their most productive receiver, number 11, Sharp, is a guy that I think competes for the ball very well. Probably similar in size to Cooper Kupp in terms of his physical stature. And I know that's a stretch maybe to say a guy's as good as Cooper. I wouldn't say that he's in that category, but I think that he's a very, very productive player for them, and has had a nice career there. I think he's a senior, he's a good route runner, physical guy, blocks well, does a lot of good things for him in the offense. Their other running backs they use, they kind of use this 85 guy. What's his name?
Pringle.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He's you know, returns kicks for him. He had a touchdown on a kick return against UND. They use him in the backfield. He scored from as a running back. They use him as a wide receiver. He's kind of a wild card for him. And then last week, 23 had a big game. I think he's a freshman running back for him. Had a big game for him against Idaho State. They have two massive tight ends, number 19 and number 88. Both of them very good players. They'll get into 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends, and they don't just run 2 tight end inline sets. They open up the formation, and they'll give you some problems like that. I know that's something I talked to Ty about. I said, better watch some of the Weber State stuff, because a lot of that, the similar in terms of their tight end skill set, the guys that they have there. And so we're definitely going to have to kind of have a plan for how to deal with those guys. And I think that's kind of their personnel on offense. And they're interesting because they kind of run their offense. They kind of have a spread gun run, zone read, quick game, split the ball out, those type of things, take their shots down the field. And then they'll have kind of their game plan segment. So they run their offense, this is their base offense, then okay, this is what we feel like is going to be good against this opponent. And then they kind of have their short yardage goal line stuff. That's completely different, where they bring in extra offensive linemen and do some different things. And so they give you a lot to prepare for on the offensive side of the ball. And I think the fact that Taylor is kind of emerging with more confidence is certainly something that has played well for them over the last couple of weeks. On defense, these guys look like a Power 5 front. I mean, they're big. Number 51, 350. I don't think that's an exaggeration. I mean, when you see him out there, his body looks 350, and he's a big dude. 97, Torgerson kid. Maybe doesn't get as much run as Peely on the outside. But last week against Idaho State, this guy was very, very impressive. Thought he had an outstanding game. I think he might lead the team in sacks after his performance a week ago. And then number 8, Peely, the big kid on the outside, is a very good player as well. So those are 3 of the 5 or 6 guys that they play on the interior and on the edge on the D-line. Very impressed with those guys. They're all, I think, capable pass rushers, physical guys, very hard to move. Probably the statistical star of their defense is number 34, the Needham kid. He's very, very active. I think he's a guy they feel really good about because they don't necessarily have to sub him. When you get into a nickel situation, they feel like they can leave him on the field. He can match slot receivers and tight ends. And so that's a luxury for them on defense, where they don't have to bring guys off the field. Like him a lot. And then the other inside linebacker, number 55, Tafega, is a really productive, good player. Safety, Collette, probably statistically the leader back there. Very active guy, does a nice job for him. But I'm impressed with their corners. One of the reasons why I think they can do some of the things they do on their defense is because I think they feel like they can let their corners play man-to-man. And they've really done that just about against everybody. And so it's kind of their deal on those 2 phases. Special teams wise, I talked about number 85 as a returner. Their punter is averaging over 45 yards a punt, so it's very good in terms of flipping the field and controlling field position for them. And with some of those big bodies on the D-line, they create some problems for people when they're kicking extra points and field goals, and they blocked a couple of those. And so I think it's a well-rounded team, obviously coming off a conference championship a year ago. Even with the head coaching change, there's still a lot of continuity there, and they play very well at home. And so that's kind of what we're up against this week.
Jeff, what would you like to get accomplished in the last 3 games of the season?
Well, I think that one of the things I kind of challenge these guys on is that, hey, we've got a 3-game season. We've got an opportunity to go 1-0 for 3 games. And we used last week, the analogy that I kept using with them is this is fall camp. We're in August again. It just happens to be in October. And so you guys that, if there's guys that have been injured, we get a chance to get those guys healthy. That was our off season. We get guys that maybe we're trying to figure out if they have the ingredients that we want moving forward to build a championship program. And they've got an opportunity to put that foot forward. And we've got to find a way to create some momentum for us going into the off season, as well as into recruiting. And I think the one thing that we have to do is we've got to find a way to win a ball game or 2 down the stretch here. We've got opportunities. I feel like we're going to have to play very, very well to beat Southern Utah. They're a good team with some momentum right now. We're at their place, and as I mentioned, I think that's something that's an underrated factor in this league, is that home field advantage, whether it's because it's a crowd or because of the travel. And I think those are things that are underrated in this league. You even watched Montana a couple weeks ago going down to NAU. From what I understand, that's one of the tougher venues in the league to play in. And so, that's something that we've got to do, is we've got to figure out we've got 2 opportunities to go play on the road. Let's get that taste of what it's like to win a road game so we know how to replicate that in the future. And then we've got one more opportunity to play at home that we can relish and create some excitement about our program and some momentum going into the offseason.
Now that you've had a chance to look at teams in this league, what do you need to do to upgrade the talent to compete with it? That's
an interesting question, Ted. I think that I've thought a lot about that, because you kind of go through and you watch how some of these teams are built. And I think that, I think the things that stand out to me is, if you can get a good defensive line, I think that's one thing that's a really critical element, because there's so many teams in this league that are going to spread you out and throw the ball. Well, everybody talks about secondary. I take pressure over coverage every day. That's a DB's best friend, is an active pass rush. And having the ability to be able to be balanced, to be able to play the run and get after the passer with 4 guys, but that's where you don't have to hang your secondary out. So I think that's a critical thing. In terms of building a program in this league, I think it starts with the defensive line. I think the quarterback play is obvious. The teams that have the best quarterback play are generally going to be at the top of the league. And so we've got to do a great job of developing the young men that are in our program and continue to identify young men that can come in and play at a high level. And so those are 2 things that stand out without question. The obvious thing is increased team speed as well, because I think if you look at the Eastern Washingtons and the Montanas and NAU, some of these teams, and even Southern, I think Southern has very good team speed. I think that's an area where we've got to increase our depth and talent pool, is just our overall team speed. So I think moving forward in terms of the blueprint for recruiting, yes, we're going to take a lot of D linemen. One of the reasons why I think you take a lot of D linemen is, I think probably even in Montana State historically, some of the better offensive linemen have started off as defensive linemen. So you can take more bodies there, take more big bodies there, and if they don't quite fit that skill set, they still add value to your roster. Usually if you take an offensive lineman and he doesn't pan out, what else is he going to do? And so I think that's one of the reasons why I'm inclined to take a heavier number of defensive linemen. And then the quarterback play, I think, is kind of self-explanatory. And then team speed speaks to athletes as a wide receiver and defensive back spots. Really primarily guys that are already moved, like Ben Folsom, getting him some reps and turns at the safety spot. That's probably the biggest one that stands out to me, is just how do we find out if this guy can do this, and you get a chance to give him a bunch of reps. And to his credit, he's up there this morning at 6 a.m. and grinding it out with Coach Alexander, and has been all last week as well, trying to understand the nuances of the defense and see what he can do to help and contribute down the stretch. And so that's probably the biggest one. Having some fun with some kids in terms of having some offensive linemen take some D-line reps during one-on-ones and vice versa. Try to break up the monotony of it. Did a lot of competitive stuff, as I mentioned last week, whether it was putting us into 3rd down competitions, best 3 out of 5, goal line, 2-minute, or sumo wrestling, or tug of war, whatever it takes to just try to cultivate that spirit, keep the energy level high, because I think that's something that we've got to pay attention to. It's a long, demanding season. It's not going necessarily the way you want it to, and so how do you keep these guys focused and energized? And I think we've tried to be a little bit creative in that regard.
You talked a lot about
Chris, and obviously needing game reps as a young guy. So what does a bye week look for him in terms of trying to make the same kind of?
Well, one of the things that we did with him this week was we do a lot of, at this point, I think probably, I'm guessing that everybody at the FCS level does more what we call service, which is 1s-on-2s, 2s-on-1s, or 1s-on-1s type of stuff at this time of year, because you're at that point where it's like your roster starts to shrink a little bit because of attrition and injury, and to get good game speed reps, you have to kind of practice against each other more. And so let's say we've got 8 plays of 1D against 2-0. Well, for those 8 plays, Chris is over here and he's working on these specific throws, these specific this specific mesh. Whether it's working with the running backs, working with the wide receivers, and it's not wearing their legs out, it's just stand them in a spot and get a bag of balls, and we're just throwing quick game. We're just throwing this route. Because I don't know that we can accelerate those game reps anymore, but one thing we can do is we can get those bank reps in practice. And I think that's something that we've really identified, that he doesn't need to be standing around watching this 8 plays. He's got to be over here getting these reps so that we can maximize his ability to feel comfortable.
You mentioned the young guys getting them a lot more reps, but then also trying to go 3-0 to remain the season. Is there a balance there between getting more young guys game reps and also trying to go 3-0 down the stretch?
Yeah, well, I think when we're talking about the young guys, we're talking probably more in practice, a lot of red shirts. And so that was probably the big emphasis for us, was doing some what we call candy dishes, young guy scrimmages, let those guys go a little bit, and because they get lost in the shuffle a little bit. They start going down to scout teams, and they come in and they got all this excitement, and some of them think they're going to play, some of them hope they're going to play, and then pretty soon they're just kind of going down and reading off a card for the next couple of months. And so that's one, I guess, advantage of the late bye, is we get a chance to kind of revisit some of those kids. And, yeah, that guy is pretty good. I'm excited about him. Helps us as coaches too, go and process, well, this is what our unit looks like and what we need to be thinking about as we go into recruiting. So that's probably what I was talking about more. There are some guys that they got to play. And Chris is one of those guys. Kevin Cassis is one of those guys. Anthony Pegues, you got Damian Washington, those true freshmen that are playing for us. We've got to give those. We definitely gave those guys a lot of reps. But does JP need a lot of reps at this point in his career? No. Chad and Gunner, probably not. Austin, probably not so much. So it's that balance of letting those young guys get game ready and keeping the old guys fresh.
How comfortable is Chris getting in the offense now?
I think it's getting more and more, and I think it's really twofold. It's number one. Coach Messingham and the offensive staff really feeling like, okay, this is what we think he can handle, and being able to cater the game plan to him more and more each week, and on his part, him being more and more comfortable with the offense. So that list between what we think he can handle and what he feels comfortable with starts to expand each week as he gets more more opportunities in games.
Is Nigel in a position where he can maybe help with the final 3 weeks?
I hope so. He looked really, really good on Sunday. Talked with him today. It's the first time he's been on the injury report and it said go. It didn't say limited, it didn't say no, it said go. And so if everything goes good, he'll line up a corner for us this week.
Other injured guys, Dylan Mahoney, how's he doing?
Good. I think it's still I think we're looking at the next week to amp him up in practice. By the end of this week, he won't just be riding a bike, he'll be doing some other things, and then get him going in practice the week of the UC Davis game, see how he feels. If everything's thumbs up and awesome, hey, we'll roll him. And if not, he may need that extra week, but I do think he'll play against Montana regardless of how it goes next week.
And Tucker?
Tucker's probably a guy that's going to, it's going to be one of those game time deals for him. And that's kind of what we talked about. He practiced last week non-contact. He's going to practice this week non-contact. And, we'll get out there in warm-ups and see how he's feeling.
Was Southern Utah's performance against Idaho State more impressive to you, given the big letdown they had against Weber the week before, I guess, psychologically bouncing back?
Yeah, I can feel their pain. We blew a big fourth quarter lead earlier in the year, and it was just a strange game. Watching it on film, you're like, exactly how did this happen? And, to Weber's credit, they just kind of kept plugging away and fighting, and were able to find a way to get it done at the end. And I do think that, Southern got gassed on defense down the stretch, and that's one of the things they hang their hat on, and they take a great deal of pride in, is playing a ton of really good reps on defense. In that fourth quarter, they just, a lot like what happened to us at Sac State, their offense couldn't sustain that one drive just to get their defense off the field, and kind of created hope for Weber, and they capitalized on that. So, yeah, I was very impressed with the way their kids bounced back, showed a lot of resiliency and a lot of fight. That's a credit to their coaching staff and the young men that are down there playing.
What did you do on Saturday? Just out of
What did I do? Well, I went to Billings on Friday, got back on Saturday, I did some maintenance around the house. I went for a walk, watched a bunch of football because I like watching other people be in misery and pain. And that was kind of it. You know, just spent some time with the family, just relaxed. You know, tried to, you know, it was what a beautiful day, by the way. I mean, it was awesome. So can't beat that.
Can you tell everyone's re-energized here after?
Yeah, I felt it very much yesterday. Seeing the coaches, it's amazing what 24 hours away from this building will do for you. It's not the paint, I'm sure, but it's you know, I mean, it doesn't take much when you grind the way we do. It doesn't take much to just feel like, I was like, you know, it's like getting a week off, you know. So I think the coaches are all came back. We sent a handful of guys out and doing some recruiting, and you know, even I know just for myself, just being able to hop in the truck and drive to Billings and, you know, either listen to the radio or, you know, turn my phone off, not have to worry about any of that. There's a lot of value in that.
You mentioned some of the coaches getting out and recruiting. Has the recruiting strategy or pitch changed in the last couple of weeks, or where are you guys at just in terms of what?
Yeah, you know, I think it's not. It really hasn't, because I think what we're in the process of selling here is threefold. Number one, the education at Montana State. Number two, the experience that you're going to have playing here, and number three, the experience that this staff has and what we're building. And so those are the things that we focused on really from day one in the process all the way back to the 2016 recruiting class. And I think we've got a lot of good traction. I think the kids that have been here, it's kind of awesome because there's a mix between the kids that have, you know, maybe haven't been on campus yet and young men that have, especially some kids that have been here for the game day environment. And, you know, those guys, they talk to each other, or maybe not face to face or on the phone because nobody does that anymore, but you know, they communicate with one another via social media, and it seems to, they've kind of created a bond. And I think that's important. They already feel like a recruiting class that's committed to Montana State, and they're in the process of recruiting other guys. And I think they see what we're trying to do here, and I think they're excited about the future. And I certainly think that you know, the support that our fan base gives us has been a big part of that, because we can certainly sell to that.
Are there guys at Montana, high school kids, that can really help this program?
Yeah, I would certainly think so. We've got you know, a number of young men that we're in the process of recruiting right now that I think can do a great job of elevating the talent level and the toughness of our program, and that's what we're all about.
You mentioned the shots they take down, Southern Utah takes down the field, especially to Sharp. You guys have done well at kind of harboring that, or I guess declining that. So, I mean, do you think there's going to be some carryover?
Well, I think here's the deal. It's you know, I think you got to understand what your deficiencies are, and you got to make sure that you do a good job of not allowing somebody to jump on you in that way. And so, you know, for example, against Eastern Washington, we're not going to play Cooper Kupp man-to-man. We're not going to play Kendrick Jason Bourne man-to-man, okay? Or Shaq, or any of those guys. I think we have one guy that could do it out there. You know, I think Johnny could have matched up. But it's pick your poison, right? We're not going to play three guys in straight man-to-man coverage. You can, I mean, Montana, I thought had a good plan, but they got into that situation where eventually it came back to haunt, right? I think they made him earn it, made him earn it. They missed some shots. I think the weather helped. And God, I think if we'd had some rain here that last Saturday, he might not have done what he did to us, but he didn't look quite as efficient in the rain and sleet and Cheney as he did when he was here. But, you know, I think you just got to be smart. And so Nigel plays into that for us. You know, I mean, if he can step up and have some good reps for us, that helps. But I think that our style has been to try to make teams earn it and then play good red zone defense. And you know, I think we've been, you know, with rare exception this year, I think we've done that for the most part. Made teams, teams are going to get their yards in this league. It's all about red zone defense and scoring defense and trying to get off the field and give our offense the ball back. The biggest thing we got to do is we got to create some takeaways.
What do you anticipate this trip to Cedar being like?
I think we fly into Cedar City and then we go up to Bryan Head, I guess is where we're staying. And so it's like 8,000 feet up there, so it's kind of a windy, I'm guessing, bus ride up to the top of the mountain. And then you stay there, and then you just got to get up a little early. It's 12:10 kickoff, so we got to get up a little earlier and, you know, get back down the mountain. And you know, kind of when you wake up, you're in game mode, and you got a little bit more time to listen to your music or whatever on the way down the hill, and it's time to go. And so, you know, I've never been there. I've been through Cedar City. We used to have a function in St. George all the time when I was at Washington or at Utah State back in the day. And you know, it's a pretty part of the world. It's about what I know about it.